Hey folks, welcome to Fresh Produce. I'm Pete from BTI. Today I've got a special guest, Brad Waldron from Cali Protectives. Now Brad is the co-founder and one of the main designers behind the brand, so I think we're going to get some really good insight into the brand and the decisions that are made when these helmets are kind of being produced. So let's get right into it. Brad, welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, so I'm excited to have you on because I think Cali really makes some unique helmets out there, really different in terms of safety and the construction compared to most of your big competitors. So I'd love to just hear in your words, like what makes Cali different? Why do you design helmets the way you do? Tell me about the brand and your products.
You bet. Thanks for asking that question. We around here like to say we just give a shit. We care. We care about what happens. We talk about the fact that when somebody crashes, we want everybody to get up and ride. Right now, we can't control the crashes, so we're going to do the best we can to provide that safety. We're small. We're nimble. I still get to make all the decisions, and as long as I'm in this position, safety will be number one. We put that before everything. I work with a lot of universities, professors on brain trauma and how to reduce all forces, not just rotational forces, but all low G, high G, oblique impact. We do a lot of testing. So we're really research-based. That probably came out of my years in aerospace as a carbon fiber R&D engineer. And the mentality there was always try it. Just try it. Why not? And I think in a bigger company, sometimes you get a little caught up in, what does management say? What does, can I get this by, my manager before he even goes to his manager? Then maybe he gets to the VP. Then, you get the idea. So we have a really, let's just try it mentality here.
Cool. And it does seem like the helmet world is sort of unique in the bike industry in that there's so much research and science behind like what actually works for our bodies. Whereas, in tires and things like that, like you just go out and ride, it doesn't feel good. That's that. But in terms of helmets, it's a lot more science and research backed and based. Also, a lot of that research comes from other industries, right? Like football world is going to be adding some research into bike helmet design, I imagine.
Football, boxing, a lot of things that we learn about, those other sports and what happens. Still, unfortunately, there's so much we don't know about the brain. So, we're constantly, learning from FEA modeling and frankly, the way they still can see what happened in the brain is after the guy's passed away, right? Yeah. We hope to get past that someday where we can start doing the modeling on live patients. And there is some of that going on. But in the meantime, what we can do is we can keep looking to reduce energy. We do know that a lot of things happen when your head hits the ground or another person. In the case of football, boxing, where you're just constantly spinning the brain. You got the different levels of the brain that spin and the axion stretch and break. We want to reduce that as much as possible.
Definitely. And then for us cyclists, like we really want to avoid head hits in all instances as much as we can. But for a lot of folks, it's inevitable. It's going to happen at some point, or even if it's not, you're going to take those precautions. So you have to, I imagine, design in a helmet that's comfortable, that you want to wear all the time while also being super safe, right? Like,
I've been caught saying, much to the chagrin of some of my people here, the best helmet you can wear is the one you're going to put on your head. If it's Cali, awesome. If you really believe in what we do, that's great. But I'm okay if you're wearing somebody else's helmet, as long as you're stoked about it and you're willing to put it on your head. If you're like, geez, I'm just going down to the store and I don't really like my helmet. I just bought it because that Cali guy said it's the safest ever, but I'm going to leave it and then I get hit by a car. It does good. So design, I started Cali on a safety innovation in the motorcycle side. And, at first, you said I was one of the designers earlier, and I'm actually the engineer. The designers are the guys who make it look bitchin', right? And I would say in the early days of Cali, I didn't focus on that. I focused on safety, and we had some butt-ass ugly helmets. and finding the magic, and making them look great on top of the safety is a balance. So we, again, as long as I'm in this seat, safety will be first, but we do realize that if it doesn't look good, you ain't gonna want to put it on your head either.
That's right. And feel good on top of it. It's got to be light. It's got to breathe. All those are kind of key points too, right? So yeah, I guess speaking of some of the decisions that you are making, I want to specifically talk today about this new Cascade helmet. This thing looks, feels, everything like a normal helmet, but you've made some choices to make it super sustainable, a little more ecologically friendly than other helmets. Helmets are super plastic based. So how do you do that?
Well, there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work out in the world to try and reduce, our CO2 emissions. And, a lot of things we did on this helmet are available to every helmet company. The visor is made from reclaimed ocean plastics. I'm not out there in a boat collecting ocean plastics, but there are people who are, and they provide those opportunities for us. It costs. The Cascade helmet is not cheap. I like to say, we use bamboo pads. That's a renewable resource. So that's I'm not out there growing bamboo. There's companies that you can buy this stuff from and put in your helmets. I think some of the trickier things are the recycled EPS. We don't just go pick up beer coolers off the beach. We actually control the EPS that we do use for recycling, and that's actually from an automaker in the Midwest that usually just throws their brand new EPS away, and it's still good. It's controlled, and so we can mix it in with some of the new EPS, and we still can get the performance that we expect while lowering our CO2 emissions. The water bottle straps, so it's PET water bottle straps.
Yeah.
It seems simple, but it is actually on the Cascade the one thing that reduces CO2 emission more than any of the other things that we put into the helmet for lowering the emissions. And lo and behold, it only costs 35 cents more. So if we hadn't gone down this route, we wouldn't know all these things. You just got to try. So all of a sudden, I'm looking at all our line and go, all right, we might not be able to put an ocean plastics visor on every helmet because the cost is what it is. Bamboo pads are more, but 35 cents, and it has the biggest lowering of CO2 emission. We're going to move that down line fast. Now, our goal is always to develop new things and move it down line. But if you don't start somewhere, you don't know.
Yeah. So this was kind of like an exploratory experiment to put out this helmet that it does everything you can, see if it's going to be taken up well by the market, see if the cost plays out in the market, and then push some of these innovations maybe down the line or what have you.
We had debates when this thing was sitting on the table. We're like going, man, that's going to cost this or this, and that's going to cost that. And, I finally just said, we got to do this. We have, a big, environmental problem, and, how can we each do something about it? Right. And, again, there are people out there who are really trying to make a difference and provide things for companies.
Yeah.
The company that we get the work with on the visors called Oceanworks. Trek came out with this really cool basket for their Electra bike. It's kind of cool. So it's all reclaimed ocean plastics.
Right.
So, in the helmet world, I kind of like calling out our competitors going, guys, you can do all this.
Yeah.
It's just, you just have to make the decision to go ahead and do it.
Yep, absolutely. And I think you kind of started with making this point, but you haven't made these changes to every helmet in the line. You still want helmets in different price points that are available for those folks that might not be able to afford this high-end helmet, but still for those that can make the choice to have a little bit more sustainable helmet, this is an option.
Right, and keep driving that technology down market. Right. One of our innovations, working with a professor out of Australia, is our cone head, which is those geometric shapes inside, and they crush and send energy laterally. Well, before we could only afford to put that in a motorcycle helmet, but as we've learned more and more, it goes further and further down the line. Cascade has it, but so does the Maya. At $130, we got a helmet at $100 that does that. So yeah, you learn and you drive technology down.
Cool. I think that's really cool to just hear about a little bit of that process company wide and how that trickles down and stuff. So very neat. And I would make the point that this helmet does not seem, this helmet is definitely not at all you said it's not less safe. It's definitely not less comfortable. It's not heavier. It's a super nice helmet. And so I think it probably deserves that price premium, even aside from the extra, the more expensive materials that went into it. So yeah, it fits my head really well. I'm pretty stoked on the way this thing looks excellent. And overall, super nice helmet. Now, I also want to just talk about something that goes through your whole line. It's these little blue dots inside. Tell me, that's really unique. Tell me what those things do and why they're in there.
You bet. That material is called Rayon. It's an invention from a professor that I work very close with from the Imperial College of London. And the guy's a hell of a writer, by the way. Nice. So the idea behind this is I believe all helmets are too hard. We're actually hurting people. Our helmets are built to withstand a standard that says all I got to do is send a helmet in to a test lab, and as long as it doesn't have an impact over 300 Gs, I can sell it. And 300 Gs is close to death, if not death. So we're just right on the borderline of what's safe. And to make those impacts pass the test, we have to make the helmets harder. So we do things like multiple layers, those geometric shapes I talk about. But even with that, the low G hit is still going to give you some level of brain trauma. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is start dissipating the energy immediately on impact. So what those things do is they crush immediately at 0 Gs and then start to harden up, because it is a phase changing material. And then they also fold over. So they're helping with those rotational forces that has become such an important and hot topic in helmets in the last 5-7 years.
Right. Yeah. So it seems like it's really kind of killing two birds with one stone, both the low G forces and the rotational kind of at the same time. Right.
Right. We talk about the dynamic range of a helmet. Studies have said that 80% of all bike crashes are below 106 Gs. Yet we're building them for 300 Gs.
Yeah.
Our goal is simple. We want to take care of that whole range, not just a specific range.
Yeah, totally. So I guess that brings me up to, I do want to just quickly bring up your competitor with this system. You're not using MIPS in any of these helmets because you've got the rayon material in there, offering some of that rotational compliance. So can you just briefly talk about how this system differs from MIPS maybe?
Sure, and it really has to do with that dynamic range. Yeah. MIPS has a very specific range that it wants to take care of. It totally focuses on rotational forces.
Yep.
It doesn't talk about low G or even high G. So you've got a layer between your head and what's supposed to crush. Now MIPS works. MIPS does help reduce rotational forces. I've spent time studying it. I've talked to the MIPS guys all the time. They're like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Dynamic range. Make something softer. Put something softer next to your head."
Yeah.
So it really builds into my philosophy that helmets are too hard, and MIPS increases linear low Gs, which are still important, by my study showed 12 to 15%. Now labs are different. We can get different results, but I'll just come back to what I said, and that's MIPS works in a very specific impact and does a good job at that.
Yeah.
We're just trying to take care of more.
Cool. I mean, I think that's a good description of the difference, and I think yeah, it speaks to why the product's different, why you're designing it differently. I appreciate that. Another point I quickly wanted to talk about is we're seeing a ton more e-bikes on the trails, and you're talking a lot about some low G impacts. Do you think as we get more folks riding faster on e-bikes, does that necessitate a different helmet or a different helmet standard? Where do you think that plays into the market right now?
Man, that's a big question.
Yeah.
It's actually a great question.
A lot of layers for sure.
Yeah. Most of our helmets are going to be fine.
Yeah, like you said, they already deal with that really high energy impact, right? So you're not, and especially with e-bikes being kind of limited at some certain speed, you're probably going faster on the downhill than the e-bike helps you go any other time, right?
I always think, though, as you know, you're at a higher speed for longer times.
That's a good
what
point.
I find on my e-bike. Absolutely. When I'm going downhill on my acoustic bike, for sure I can hit those speeds easy. But you are sustained at a higher speed on average. And frankly, I worry about a lot of the people who haven't ridden for a while or are new to riding, and I'm sure you've seen it on your trails that are a little less experienced. And so they're from a standard side, it's the industry or the standards people have been really slow to react. They're not really sure what to do, what they want to do. They argue about it like they tend to do. So the Dutch came along and said, "What? You want me to ride a motorcycle helmet when I'm on my e-bike? No way." So they put out a pretty good standard. And what it basically did was raise the drop height that we drop in the test lab. So the helmet has to withstand a higher G rating. It's honestly a little bit of a dilemma for me, because when you do that, I have to increase the density. And the best thing I believe for a helmet is lowering the density.
Yeah, you're losing some of that ability on the low energy side to accommodate the high energy side.
Right, right. So, we're trying to counter that with better layering of different materials. We are now mixing a nano material in with our EPS. So we take this material that's made in Italy, send it to Ohio, mix it all together, and then send it over to the factory to be assembled. Just think about all the nightmares with all the logistics issues we've had over the last.
Yeah, our global shipping issues. Yeah.
So, but I will go back to this when somebody asked me, do you need an e-bike helmet? And by the way, the Cascade is rated for the Dutch standard,
Cool.
And so we do test it to a higher standard. I always tell e-bike companies that aren't carrying helmets or don't know much about the helmet standards that, if you're going to rent your e-bikes out to, let's say, the Four Seasons Maui, and you put a family on that aren't used to riding bikes, you might want to make sure that you give them that higher level of protection.
Yeah, right.
Because if something goes bad there, that you don't want to be in that position. So
definitely.
Yeah, lots to think about in that discussion for sure. And in the end, it all comes down to kind of each person's own belief system, own assessment of risk, and all that kind of stuff. And that actually that kind of a nice transition into a different helmet I want to briefly talk about, the Invader helmet. You and I started talking aside from this video earlier because I recently took a crash on some trails I know super well, ride all the time. It felt like just a normal cruise, like I was by myself, not racing anybody. But I took a pretty serious crash and actually hit my face with a half shell helmet. Man, something like this totally would have helped me out and hooked me up and avoided a swollen jaw, scraping on my face, maybe even a lot more. But I was still thinking, this is just a cruisy ride. How do I make this choice to wear a full face versus my half shell helmet? And I guess this Invader makes the choice a little easier because it's so breathable, it's so light. You could just wear it on every ride and be comfortable. So I'd love for you to kind of hear your ideas about where this helmet fits into the industry or the market.
Well, for me, this came from, seeing, the bikes are getting better. We're able to ride harder than ever. So we're riding our trails that we've been riding for a long time, but we're riding them harder. We're riding them faster. We're putting more jumps on them. So this was never, everybody assumes that if you put a chin bar on, it's a downhill helmet. This was never intended to be a downhill helmet. I call it a full face trail helmet.
Yeah.
I wanted it breathable. I wanted it to feel like I could wear it for hours and not feel like, man, I got to rip this off my head. Like if you're wearing your full face downhill helmet, you're constantly wanting to yank that thing off your head. So,
yeah, you're never going to see me on the chairlift with my full face on. It's always off the minute I can get it off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So with the Invader, the best way I can say it is the way I just did was, it is meant to be a full face trail helmet. By the way, you're recovering quite nicely from your crash. And I actually was riding a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Plant, the inventor of Rion. And he was wearing his Invader, and I crashed on the first, and I was wearing a half shell, crashed on the first run, and I was bleeding everywhere. They thought the day was over. I was fine. But he looked at me because he was wearing his Invader. He's like, dude, this wouldn't have happened if you would have been wearing your Invader.
Yeah, and that's kind of came back to my original point. Is so much of this comes down to like each person's assessment of risk, and it sure does make it easier, to make that call when you do have like a super breathable, comfortable helmet. This thing weighs 642 grams. Like that's not much more than like a lot of other half shells. So definitely makes it more possible. But it does come down to like all of us making that choice for ourselves. And a story we probably all need to tell. Maybe even folks at the bike shop can start having that discussion a little bit more as they're selling, an enduro bike to someone that hasn't put a lot of time on it in the past. You're going to be riding faster. You're going to start riding a little more technical trails as you get more comfortable on this thing. Like, start thinking about these options.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah. I mean,
riding just, with like I said, the bikes are getting better. And I'm enjoying it, and so, the protection needs to go with it.
Yeah. My point being, for all those bike shop folks out there watching, like, start having that conversation. I think it's kind of on us to start spreading that word and showing the options that are out with these different helmet and other protection, and it'll go a long way. So, super cool. Well, Brad, that kind of wraps up really everything that I wanted to cover today. Do you have any other points you want to bring up before we wrap up?
Man, we covered a lot. I really enjoyed talking to you about it. So, no, we're good. Thanks.
Sweet. So yeah, just my little brief summary is, it just seems to me like Cali is unique and innovative in just the way that you guys want to bring more safety to everyone, have helmets that everyone wants to wear regardless of what they're doing, and just the right level of safety, available to anybody out there on a bike, right?
I appreciate that. Yeah, we want to keep innovating, keep, trying new things, and keep making things safer.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time and hearing your insights from kind of the backside of it. Super interesting to me, so appreciate it.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, thank you. Folks, thanks for watching. If you want to get yourself a Cali helmet, make sure you ask at your local bike shop and tell them BTI sent you.